program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participant and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of our Minority Advocacy Council, or our programs or sponsors.
KLEK 102.5. And good morning to you on your Thursday, July 21st, 2016. This is Community Conversations. Kiddo Wonder is in the studio with you. I have my co-host, Mrs. Willhite, in the studio as well. And we have local attorney, Mr. Scott Willhite. And of course, for some of you that are longtime listeners of KLEK, you may remember Mr. Willhite from our KLEK legal minutes that we used to do, where we're doing a little something different with Mr. Willhite now. People that don't call Scott, but so Scott is going to come in once a month. I can't remember. It's going to come on a Thursday. We have on the calendar. He's going to come in once a month, and we are going to talk legal matters, and that means we will also take your questions on certain legal matters as well. So let's go ahead and get into conversation. So Scott, tell us a bit about yourself and your background and what made you want to get into the legal profession.
Well, first of all, Angie, I want to thank you for having me on the program. I was born in Jonesboro and St. Bernard's Hospital down the street here. I've spent most of my life in Jonesboro. I went to Jonesboro High School, graduated in 1979, played ball here, and went to ASU, and then went on to University of Arkansas.
What kind of ball did you play?
Played football mainly.
Oh, wow.
What position?
I was quarterback.
Okay, so you could throw a ball, you can play the guitar, you got all these talents that you're not telling us about.
Okay.
Well, in moderation, I suppose, here. But, I spent some time in Memphis, went to law school and spent some time in Memphis for about 8 years practicing law, and then decided that this community is where I wanted to live, and moved here in 1997 and have been here back ever since, and have a wife and 2 girls, and just enjoy this community and the people of the community.
All right, and so you want to get into the legal profession?
Well, I was actually a computer programmer for a couple of years. That was my initial degree from ASU. I was working for a company here in Jonesboro, and sitting in front of the computer monitor really didn't do it for me. I needed some personal contact with people and issues, and I felt like I was a problem solver. And that's probably what drew me to the computer programming area. But a friend of mine, who's a local pastor here now, is in law school, and we discussed it, and I felt like that was a way that I could help people, solve real problems that they have in their lives.
And do you felt that you have done that throughout your career, to help people solve problems?
That's what I've tried to focus on. I represent mainly individuals. I have in the past represented companies, insurance companies and things, but over the last 40 or so years, I have represented individuals with workers' comp claims, personal injury claims, criminal issues, guardianship, things of that sort, just sorting through the everyday situations that people are involved in, and then make some help legally to work through.
All right, so I'll let Kabila answer this question. I don't want to take over the show.
No, I just want to ask, what does your specialty have? What is your specialty? Like, is there a particular category you fall into?
I would characterize if you could say it's a specialty, it is anything relating to court.
Okay.
If it's a courtroom issue, and that's why a workers' comp involves trying cases, people who are injured at work, personal injury trying cases, people may have auto accidents, things of that sort, criminal cases where people are charged with crimes. But I never gravitated to drafting documents and sitting in the office as much as I do. I really enjoy being in the courtroom.
Okay.
All right, so describe the process of becoming an attorney. What types of classes must a person take to become an attorney? What kind of tests to get their license that a person would have to take?
Well, as you might tell from my background, you can really have any undergrad degree. So a college degree qualifies you to take the LSAT, which is the test, the entrance test for law school.
Okay.
And they consider the test and your grades from undergrad in determining whether you are admitted to law school. So just really taking the test and an undergrad degree can gain you admittance.
Okay, so once you get into law school, like what kind of What kind of classes? What are some of the theories or things that are discussed in law school?
Well, you start out with basics, which a criminal class, procedure, and law. You have torts, which is things people do, maybe deviate from a certain standard. Maybe it applies to auto accidents, things of that sort.
Now, when you say the word tort, define it for the listeners.
It's a wrong done on a person by another person.
Okay.
Just gives you a cause, to make a suit against someone for damages.
Okay. And once a person completes law school, what's the next step? Isn't that where the bar exam comes in? How does all that work?
The bar exam. That's the fun part of it. Once you get through your 3 years of law school, you have to pass a bar exam in a state that you want to practice in. My situation was that I practiced in Memphis, and so I took the Tennessee bar in 1989, a few years ago now. And I wanted to also practice in Arkansas, but you cannot do that unless you either are admitted by the Supreme Court or take the bar. So I took the Arkansas bar in 1991 and passed it, so I'm licensed in both states.
All right. That's really good. Now, what are some of the different types of attorneys, and what is like the difference between them? What do they do? I know you mentioned criminal trial. I think you said you may have done some corporate work at one point. So what are some of the different types of attorneys?
Well, in the first firm I worked for, it was at the time it was the largest law firm in Tennessee, and they had you really had to specialize. You went in either to litigation, which is courtroom work, or you went into I call document drafting, but they like to call it corporate, everything of that sort, where you may draft documents for corporations, maybe to incorporate a business, an agreement between certain parties, but just drafting documents dealing with issues outside the courtroom. I sort of think of my job as when they mess up or when something goes wrong in that process, and then it would come to me.
You come in to fix it.
That's right. And you also have, bankruptcy attorneys specialize maybe in bankruptcy cases. Some attorneys specialize in criminal cases. So you have some attorneys work for the FBI, the government. So there's many areas that you can go into with a law degree.
Okay, and I know there are some that work strictly with family issues, like divorce, adoptions, and things of that nature. So.
Right, and that's really become a specialty, not only in Jonesboro, but in Memphis. I was in 1997. Most people who did handle divorces really didn't handle them at all because it was such a specialized area of the law, and we had parenting plans and things that were in place that you really didn't know about unless you were there every day. So here in Jonesboro, I think there are 5 to 10 attorneys who specialize in family law, divorces, post-divorce custody issues, child support issues, things of that sort.
Wow.
So what are some of the other fields of law besides those that you may not have covered?
Well, there are prosecutors and defense attorneys. If you work for the county or the state or the federal government, you might be a prosecutor. And you might prosecute criminal cases. You could be a defense attorney privately, or you could be hired by the county or another governmental entity to be a public defender. Those are all in the courtroom just about every day handling criminal cases.
All right, phone lines are open at 870-277-1080. Once again, that phone number is 870-277-1080. We're speaking with local attorney Scott Willhite. So if you have any questions about any legal matters, you can call us up and he will do his best to answer them. Now, some of them, if they're too sensitive of a nature, you might have to contact him or another attorney in town to get a more in-depth thing. But if for something general or can you hear and get into
but I have worked in the clinical setting on lots of cases, so I try to give you the best answer I can. A prosecutor obviously is attempting to show the person committed a crime. He's got witnesses. He will call witnesses and present evidence, and it would be in a criminal setting, which the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, as you can sort of imagine from that standard. Very high burden.
Okay.
If there's any reasonable doubt,
Okay.
and the definitions of reasonable are pretty plain in the rules, but so that's what the prosecutor has a statute, and Arkansas has many statutes, criminal statutes cover this area. Let's say it's driving while intoxicated. There's certain elements in that statute that the prosecutor has to prove.
Okay.
Very clear. So the prosecutor has the statute, he has his witnesses, and he's presenting those to a judge, trying to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person committed the crime. Well, the defense attorney, on the other hand, is trying to prove that there is reasonable doubt,
Yes.
or maybe that one of the elements has not been met sufficiently.
I can imagine it can get pretty ugly in court when both sides are trying to present their case. Have you ever seen a witness get really attacked by the other?
You don't see that very often.
Okay.
We have a great group of attorneys in this
Okay.
town, very professional, but there are situations where someone is taking a position that you believe is not true, or maybe an expert witness who has stated an opinion that you believe is not supported by any sort of science or evidence, where, I've seen some attorneys get in the face of some witnesses and really challenge them.
And that kind of translates to our next question. A lot of people see court shows on TV. How is real life court different from TV? Like, for example, Judge Judy.
It's certainly not as dramatic in most circumstances. Now, I have had a few trials where very dramatic things have happened, but that would be more a situation. You may have a trial in district court here in Jonesboro that lasts 30 minutes or an hour, that time frame. But whereas a jury trial, you might have a jury trial in circuit court, it could last several days or several weeks.
Okay.
And over a number of days, things tend to get more dramatic.
Oh, Lord.
So, but court TV does not. It's not run by the same rules.
Oh.
The judge is sort of in charge of the show there and asking questions, and you don't have really, as Judge Judy, seems like she's the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorney all in one. So, that's all broken down in court, where each person has a certain responsibility, as we discussed earlier, and people don't, as witnesses, don't just blurt out information and throw a document up. It's in a very orderly fashion according to the rules of evidence and procedure.
Okay. How did these shows become so popular, in your opinion? And are they only for those quick cases, things that can be handled within a day or that time frame?
Well, I can remember in law school in the late 80s what was LA law.
Okay.
And it seems like that was sort of genesis of the law dramas.
Okay.
Now it's gone to, you were talking before we went on here about law and order and things of that sort. But it seems like today's society is very attached to the legal process and how it works, and it's probably because it affects so many people's lives today. It seems, maybe in 20, 30, 40 years ago, people were not as directly affected by the legal process.
Okay.
Why do you think that's changed?
I think there are more attorneys. There are more people that maybe have been advised, educated about their legal rights. There's more corruption. There's more money being made. It's just a lot of issues.
I'm glad that you brought up corruption, because typically the legal profession as a whole doesn't isn't always held in the highest esteem. You know, people make jokes about ambulance chasers or lawyers being sleazy characters, and you know, I've met yourself, and I met, you know, several of the other local attorneys in Jonesboro, especially during the political season when you all were running for various offices, and I didn't run across a sleazy character an entire bunch of everyone I talked to. But what do you think happened to make lawyers get that reputation?
Well, several years ago, there was a change of the law that allowed attorneys to advertise. That was probably the big change. You know, I can remember talking to my uncle on my mom's side, was an attorney here in town for many years, and I have other family members that you know, were attorneys, but there was no advertising back in the day, so to speak. And when that rule changed and law began to be allowed to advertise, sort of the floodgates were open. So now, if you're in an auto accident, there's nothing to prevent, you know, someone who works for an attorney to go down and pick up that accident report. It's a public record, and send you a letter and ask you,
Well,
you know, can they represent you?
And I've been in that accident. As soon as it happens, the letters come flooding, and from all the states, you know, there's been an attorney in Little Rock and in other places that's in it. That there's
And those juries make those decisions. And so it's hard to comment on each individual situation when you don't know all the evidence. But you know, there's responsibility on both sides, on us as individuals, the officers. And you know, the thing that I've heard that sort of resonated with me is you can't judge all officers by what, you know, there's going to be people that make mistakes in every situation, whether it's an officer, whether it's an individual responding to, you know, an officer. And we were talking on air, or excuse me, before we were on air about the rules of criminal procedure and how they allow an officer to make a stop and ask for information. And so we got to do a better job on both sides of respecting authority, I think, and respecting individual lives. I think it goes both ways. You know, every life matters to me. I'm not partial to any particular area of society. I think every single person is a valuable, you know, humanity is valuable. Every human life is valuable. So whether it's an officer or an individual.
We'll talk more about criminal procedure. We're going to get ready to go to a break within the next about 40 seconds. We are speaking with local attorney Scott Willhite. I want to thank Mr. Willhite for taking time out to stop by today to answer questions of legal matters for our listeners. And of course, if you have a question, you can call us 870-277-1080. Once again, that phone number is 870-277-1080. You are listening to Community Conversations. It's Kate, LEK, on 2.5. Yeah. All right, we have a great webcam is still rolling.
That's a hard question to answer, you know, because it's It's so emotional and so complicated right now.
Yeah, I was reading and some back and forth comments on this post one day. One lady was trying to explain. One person was basically asking why aren't police held to the same standards if they committed a crime. Well, in essence, committed a crime. Why aren't they held to the same standards? Well, this lady came back and was like, well, it's a matter.
Well, hold on before you do that now. I'm gonna let you get a chance to plug your business. We can't plug your business on the air, but we can do it on the webcam. So, if you want to, if you need legal advice and you want to book Mr. Willhite, 972-1500. The number is 972-1500. His office is on Southwest Drive. He's a good guy. He's a good Christian man. So if you need to contact him for illegal matters, please hit him up. We can't say that on the air, but on the web, we're not. The FCC doesn't govern the webcam, so I just want to get that little plug in out there for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, now y'all.
The lady was trying to explain, there's some different levels to, they're allowed to do certain
Right,
things.
the criminal procedure rules, so you as an officer, they specifically cover what an officer can do. And so they're not exactly the same as what an individual would be able to do. So you have to analyze them under that law. And it doesn't give them, it gives them the right to use non-deadly force. Deadly force is a whole other issue, and that's really probably the issue that's more litigated, more prevalent now is when can an officer use force?
In this particular case, it was a young boy who was, I don't know why I was stopped by the officer, but the officer beat him over the head with his flashlight. And then he continued to steal something else and, kind of agitate these them. But you can see the cuts and scars and everything, and he was bleeding. And then from the story, there were other officers standing around, no one stopped him. And you can see the flashlight on the ground, but it's kind of like that. What prompted him to beat this boy so bad? For a flashlight, and the flashlight was pretty heavy, to the point that it broke, and he kept it. Like when it was start holding him accountable, when it was okay, enough is enough. This boy cannot fight you back. You already beat him.
And I think that's one reason they started wearing body cams, just so they have some evidence of what was going on. I had a case similar to that many years ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, and the person comes in the office and tell me the similar story. They were hit and pushed and shoved and hit in the face. But then I got more evidence. I found that, well, it really didn't happen exactly that way. It was a different story. And then another person who was there said, no, it was a third story. So it was very, very difficult to filter really what had happened, because no one needs to be treated that way. No one needs to be treated with respect. Now, I know the officers are in a situation sometimes where they have to make a split-second decision, and so that's why the rules are written so that they can use certain force under certain circumstances. But that's the difficulty is really determining what the real facts are and determining if force should have been necessary.
There was another story I saw. This was so, someone was saying about taking the police, this guy, they didn't introduce themselves, they didn't say they were looking for, they asked him what his name was, and he was like, what's going on, and so they asked him to get out of the car, and there was kind of this back and forth. He was like, why, what's going on?
Less than 30 seconds.
Do you like the educational programming that we provide? Do you like the service?
And then he was going on.
Do you like having the nation to finally call your
So
own
then it's
that
kind of like,
represents you? If so, please
they
stop
didn't
by
want to
or call
apologize, but
any
they
of
kind of
our
like,
underwriters and
my
sponsors
bad, you're not
here
doing
at
it.
KLEK and tell them thank you for their support. The support of our underwriters and sponsors is vital for us to stay on the air. So be sure to let them know that you thank them for their support.
Okay, we're on 2.5 FM, and we're back on Community Conversations. Our special guest, Mr. Scott Willhite, a local attorney in the studio with us. And before we went to break, we were discussing criminal procedure. I believe I had a question for Mr. Willhite about criminal procedure.
We were talking about I guess a criminal trial, a civil trial. What are some steps? What happens in the process?
And what are the differences?
Yeah, and most of my trials are civil trials. I would say 20% of my cases are criminal and 80% civil. So let me start with the civil, and that's where I have a better handle on things. Civil trials can be filed in district court, small claims court, you can call it either one, I suppose, if it's of a certain level, similar monetary value. Most cases I handle are either in circuit court or in workers' comp court. So they're separate courts for many individual kinds of cases. But a typical car accident case, slip and fall, things of that sort filed in circuit court. You could file a divorce circuit court, many different types, and you can have, in most of those circumstances, a jury trial, depending if you have a legal or an equitable claim. Legal being something that is asking for money, and equitable where you're being asked to do something or not do something. So, and civil, you have 12 jurors typically. And you have to, let's just say I was representing the plaintiff in that situation in a car accident, I would have to convince 9 of those 12 jurors that I was correct, that the defendant was at fault, and that my client should be some damages.
Okay.
As opposed to a criminal trial, you have to have all 12 jurors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it's a similar process. Not many cases in criminal matters go to trial from my perspective. I would bet it's less than 10%. Most of the criminal cases that I've been involved in settled. I've tried several jury trials over the years, but the majority of those settled just because, the sheer fact that jail time is scary. If someone has the possibility of jail time, they're most likely going to agree to something. Even if they say they didn't do it. And that's a hard situation to go through.
You mentioning jury trials, you're dealing with 12 individuals who have different backgrounds, different viewpoints. So what do you think, as a defense attorney, is the challenge of convincing, especially in a criminal trial, these 12 jurors to feel the way that you do, especially in a situation where, tensions may be very high or very inflamed?
The number one issue that I think you have to deal with in a jury trial is to determine if the juror can give your client the presumption of innocence the Constitution guarantees that person. Because if you're a defense attorney, you're sitting in court, and your client is next to you, everyone in the courtroom knows that that person is charged with a crime, and that somebody has that person committed a crime. But those 12 jurors are not supposed to have that in their mind. They're not supposed to think, they're probably guilty, they may be guilty. There's an actual presumption. It's clearly stated in the Constitution, presumption of innocence. You don't have to be proven guilty. So that's the number one key, I think, in a criminal trial. You have to pick the right people.
Okay. And let's talk about how that process works, because I actually, I've never served jury duty. I was in a jury duty pool. I showed up, but no, I was basically excluded, so I didn't serve on the jury. So for those people who, because there's kind of a stigma attached to jury duty, a lot of people don't want to do it. People even wonder, well, how did my name get called? So just explain how that process works.
Well, if you're a registered voter, my understanding is you can get called for jury duty. I think I've been called twice in my life, and I was stricken both times. Being an attorney, they didn't want, an attorney on the jury pool. But, you receive a summons to come down to court to be a potential juror. You'll sit in a large group of people, and the clerk will pick a certain number of people to be sort of a smaller group. Maybe there's 100 people sitting in the audience of potential jurors. They may pick 20, trying to get 12 of those to be qualified. And so, of the number of people that are picked, if it's 20, the attorney will begin questioning. It's called voir dire. They're asking questions to determine if that person would be a fair juror. And so each attorney is given a certain number of what we call strikes, so they can get rid of a certain number of jurors. It might be 3 or 4 typically. It depends on a criminal or trial. But in the end, you end up with 12 people who have been questioned by the attorney to determine that they can hear the evidence and act fairly.
Now, I want to bring up some in response to what you said. Now, I remember the time that I was brought up. Basically, one of the attorneys asked me, did I know the person that they were planning on charging? I said, well, yeah, I should work for him. So that was the end of me. But past history, there have been occasions where if a black person was on trial, that potential black jurors would be stricken, because they felt like the black would be more sympathetic, and that's how you in some cases got these conviction was overturned. So I just kind of want your response to that.
That has been an issue in various areas, and it may be a constitutional violation if the circumstances are set up correctly. If you see that a person is stricken from a potential jury pool simply because of the color of their skin, there can be a constitutional challenge, because we're not trying to get people of this color or that color. What we're trying to do is get people who, in their minds, are thinking about the case properly, that they're not prejudiced, they're not leaning one way or the other, they're not thinking that witness, before they even hear a word, is going to be truthful or not truthful. They're very just fair-minded, even-minded. And some people come into a case, let's just say that you have a brother and he was in a bad car accident, you were brought to a jury pool for a car accident. You may be thinking, yeah, I know those big trucks go too fast and they hit this one, and you may already be thinking they're probably liable, they're probably at fault. Well, that's the kind of person you probably don't want on that civil jury, because you want somebody who's with a level playing field in their mind.
And I know most of the time they want jurors that are not familiar with the case at all, but nowadays with social media and how quickly the news reports things, you may be familiar with the story before you even get called to court. So how can they really determine if someone is familiar with the story, and then once people are chosen for jury duty, do they keep them isolated during the whole time of the trial?
Yeah, I imagine that would have to be difficult in today's days to be sequestered without social media.
And it is a problem. I'm sure judges deal with it. Circuit judges, federal judges deal with it regularly. The process, the initial process I talked about earlier, is called voir dire, and it means to tell the truth.
Okay.
And so that's what you're trying to get that person to initially, is to tell the truth. What do you know about this case? Do you know the defendant or plaintiff? What do you know about this accident or this incident? And you have to rely on the individual potential juror to tell the truth. And sometimes, unfortunately, people don't. But once the jury is seated in place with members, then they typically are sequestered. They're not supposed to get on their phones and look at social media regarding. Obviously, you can call your family and tell them, I'm going to be looking at that because we ran water or something of that sort. But you're not supposed to look at any news articles, reports of anything related to the trial that you're working on. And you do typically, they allow you to go to lunch and do things like that during this. Let's just say it's a week-long trial.
Okay.
You can go to lunch and things. But once you retire to make your decision, they are sequestered, or they're put in a room, and food is brought in typically, and the bailiff, the sheriff may be asking if they need anything. People who might need medication or things. They're attended to by the bailiff until they come up with a decision.
And how does that process work, the process of deliberations?
I've never been in a jury room while deliberations are going. I've only been outside meeting, and I can't tell you how tense it is as an attorney. Most of my cases are contingent fee, which means I don't make any money unless I win. So it's very tense as you're sitting at the table with your client, not knowing if you're going to win or lose. And it might be an hour, or it might be a day, or it might be a week before they make their decision. But eventually, the judge or the bailiff will say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a verdict." And you're seated, and the jury's brought in, and the court has to stand and listen to the verdict being read in the foreman of the jury.
Now, let's assume in a criminal trial the person is found guilty. How does the appeals process work?
Excuse me. Typically, you have 30 days to file a notice of appeal. The judge has discretion in allowing the person to be out of jail. Let's just say they were sentenced to some jail time while the appeal is pending. Sometimes they're allowed to do that, sometimes they're not. But the case is submitted to the Arkansas Court of Appeals unless it's dealing with a constitutional issue or something very specific. And the Court of Appeals renders a decision on cases within 3 to 4 months, that type of time frame. And there's a panel of judges in Little Rock who oversee that.
Is there a further appeals process like that? How far can an appeal be taken up?
Well, anything beyond that first appeal is what's called discretionary, meaning it doesn't have to be accepted by the court, but you could appeal it to Arkansas Supreme Court, maybe even the United States Supreme Court, but it's all by discretionary appeal. The initial appeal from the circuit court to the Court of Appeals is as a matter of right. You absolutely have the right to submit it to that court for them to consider. Beyond that, it's discretion.
For those of you that are listening, you are tuned into the community conversations here on KLK 102.5, but we are talking with the local attorney, Mr. Scott Willhite, or Scott as he prefers to be called. I'll back it up just a little bit. We talked a lot about, how the court works, how trials work. Let's talk about how people actually get an attorney, how they are appointed an attorney, and things of that nature.
Okay. Let's cover the criminal aspect first, because if you are charged with a crime and you show up in court and are unable to afford to hire an attorney, you have the right to an attorney if there's a possibility of jail time.
Okay.
All right. If there's no possibility of jail time, typically you have the right to a court-appointed attorney. You can always hire your own. You can look on Facebook, or you can look on the phone book or on your billboards and come up with an attorney's number and call them and hire an attorney at any point for a criminal matter. And typically, matters in circuit court all potentially involve jail time. Matters in district court, which are misdemeanors, or may not. There are certain crimes that carry jail time. There are certain crimes that don't. So, but in a civil trial, you really never have a right to a court-appointed attorney. You have to hire your own.
Oh, wow.
So, prosecuting a matter in circuit court on your own without an attorney is difficult. And I would highly recommend anyone who has a matter in circuit court to obtain a private attorney.
Let's talk about hiring an attorney. There's this word that's thrown around, retainers. Can you please explain what a retainer is?
Sure. Some cases, and I would exclude maybe auto accidents, workers' comp cases, things of that sort. Those type of cases, the fee is what's called a contingent fee, and as I would explain earlier, it is a percentage of the winnings, so to speak. So if a person goes to court and auto wins $10,000 and they have a contingent fee, it's likely going to be a 1/3 fee, so their attorney is paid 1/3 of the $10,000.
Okay.
Cases involve where the attorney works on an hourly basis. It might be $100 or $200 or some denomination per hour. Those kinds of cases are the type that attorneys typically get a retainer fee, and it's just an amount of money paid up front that they can bill against. Let's just say he bills $100 an hour.
Okay.
He may get a $1,000 retainer, and he bills each of his all of his time toward that $1,000 until it goes up, and then he may bill monthly to the client.
Hey, do you feel that some people, they have a legitimate case, is winnable, but due to their economic status, they can't afford that retainer. So do you think they're kind of at a loss, so they suffer the most?
And to answer that, like in the case of public defenders, one of the stigmas is that public defenders, because they're not getting paid for, they don't provide as adequate of a defense as if the person hired a private attorney.
Let me take sort of the last first here,
Okay.
and then we'll move back to the public defender situation. Every public defender that I have met in the district, and that would include, Greene County, Mississippi County, Crittenden County, they're all they may be younger, but they're very competent. I've learned quite a bit from working alongside public defenders in criminal cases. I think one disadvantage a public defender has, maybe not that they're less skilled or less educated, but they have more cases. For instance, I might go into court with 2 criminal cases to handle in a certain term.
Okay.
They might have 20.
Oh, wow.
And so I can pay personal attention to my client and go deeper into the case sometimes than the public defender may be able to. Now, there are very skilled public defenders down here that may be able to handle that number of cases, but it's pretty stressful for me to go in court with more than 2 or 3 cases at a time.
Have you ever been a public defender?
I have not.
Okay.
But to answer Quibble's question, I think there are cases where people just don't have the funds to pay a retainer, and there are opportunities in this area to obtain a civil attorney where you don't have the money to hire.
Okay.
Would that be like legal aid?
Legal aid, that's correct.
Okay. How do explain a little bit about how legal aid works?
I have a lot of dealings. Usually I'm dealing with someone who is working with legal aid and they're on the other side of a case. But my understanding, there's an application process, and they inquire into the person's earning ability to work, things of that sort, to determine if they're eligible for help.
Alrighty.
All right.
You're listening to
Community Conversation.
and we're speaking about Willhite, a local attorney here in Jonesboro. The phone lines are open, 870-277-1080. Please call in with your questions.
I'm here for the rest of the hour. We got about 2 minutes before our next break, so Scott, just kind of touch on the difference between a trial and a bench trial.
Okay. A bench trial is simply a case you present to a judge. The judge makes the determination who's telling the truth, how the law applies to the facts, things of that sort. In a jury trial, the jury determines who's telling the truth. The law still applies the same way. The judge still applies the law. But the jury determines, for instance, if you have a couple of witnesses and one has this version of the facts and the other says, no, this is what happened. The jury decides who's telling the truth.
Okay.
And then the judge oversees that decision to make sure it's correct.
And what are the advantages and disadvantages of each?
It depends on the case as to which might be more effective. But if your client, they may not be able to connect with the jury, they may have a very difficult legal issue, and that may be one you want to try simply to a judge in a bench trial. But if you're having an emotional issue, emotional damage, things of that sort, I almost always opt for the jury trial, because the jury, it's 12 people, a more broad spectrum of ideas and perspectives.
I want to ask, and I know, of course, what we see on TV is not what happens in real life, but sometimes there's some, similarities. How can you tell if you're really getting a good judge that is unbiased, they're willing to be objective and listen to the person?
But we're getting ready to go to break, so let's hold that and come to that when we get off of the break. To Community Conversations.
I've been in court.
I'm here again.
I've been, for tickets and whatnot, and depending on how long the docket is, luckily my main name was Jones, so luckily I was, not too far down.
Always at the end.
And so there was this one judge, well, several that we've had in Jones, but everybody knew, don't piss them off, and if someone gets up there and just do like, please.
And we're still rolling.
Please don't piss them off, because then by the time they get to us,
business idea.
they're going to be hard, they're just going to be feeling that smooth, and
I think that I think you have to, if you have an attorney, have a frank conversation before the trial. And say, what's this judge's disposition? What are his strengths and weaknesses? What does he respond to? What does he not respond to? Because every judge is different. We want to pigeonhole and say that's a good judge, bad judge, but every single judge is different. And I can say this: the judges we have in this district, and they're changing now. Some of the circuit judges are changing, but we had such a quality group of judges, circuit judges in this town. I practiced in Memphis, and it was in Memphis. It was hard to get in front of a judge who was not very leaning one way or the other. And, you felt like you were. If you had this kind of case, you went in front of a judge, you were going to lose. But it seems like there's fewer of those judges here in this community.
so can the lawyers request, because you don't have more insight, can you request, based on one of the cases, can you request a certain judge, or you just get the local?
It depends on the setting. Like in a domestic case, a divorce case, you should get a temporary hearing first. That's the first hearing in front of a judge, just to get things sort of in place, as far as child support, pay things. You can pick the judge because you can look on the calendar and see who's going to be there that day. But you're assigned a judge to file a case. And so you can't pick that. So the final resolution is going to be the judge that was initially assigned. But the temporary resolution may be more of a situation where you select a judge. And in district, it's just whoever shows up. You don't know who's going to be there.
Brown, Jerry Nelson, and Malia Cook, all of the Craighead County Cooperative Extension Office here in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Tentative community
This is
conversation.
fun. Enjoy it.
Let's,
Can you bring my guitar next time?
please. So what's next day? So
I thought we were going to do the second Thursday.
I think so. I've got it on the calendar. I just
This time was something going on last week.
Arkansas, 724.
I've got
September 14th. Which is next?
It was August. Was it the 10th?
August 10th.
Second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday, August 10th.
Yeah.
Do you like music?
That'll be the last thing I do before the white night shake off.
Programming that we provide. Do you like?
But we'll be back there Monday, so
community? Do
just
you
that
like
Friday,
having a
Thursday,
station
Friday.
finally call your own that represents you?
I'm
If so,
I'm sluggish on driving back to San Antonio.
here,
Taking a vacation?
Thank you.
Well, that's when she has already mentioned.
Vital for us to stay on the air. So be sure to let them know that you thank them for their support.
And now back to the conversation. KLEK 101.5 FM.
Welcome back to Community Conversations. Thank you for listening in today. Today we have Scott Willhite, a local attorney here in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and we've been having a really great conversation about some legal matters. I hope that you all have been enjoying the show and have learned a few things. Mr. Brady was talking about judges. Can you pick the one you want, based on whatever your case is? How do you know if you're getting a good judge? I don't know how deep you can go into that.
Quickly, and you and I discussed it a little bit, but some cases allow you for a temporary hearing to pick a judge based on the date. For instance, most Mondays are domestic relations days here in Jonesboro. Okay. So you can set your temporary hearing on a Monday, and different judges may hear that. But when you file your case, a judge is assigned to your case, and that will be the judge that hears the final resolution. Typically, unless you have an agreed settlement with the opposing counsel or opposing party. So you don't really get to pick your judge.
Okay. Okay.
And I think it depends. We discussed that having your attorney explain to you the strengths and weaknesses of each judge for the trial would be very helpful.
Okay.
And let's transition into this now. How does an attorney become a judge? Are there any special qualifications?
Well, the only qualification is that you have a law license and you practice law. And so, as you guys know, I ran for district judge back in the March election and was not successful, but learned a whole lot. And, I think having quality judges is one of the most important aspects of the community, because we know the violence and the issues that are going on now with in our streets in some of the larger communities. And I'm thankful we don't have those here. We have good relations among our police officers in the community, but the judge is the one who oversees those issues if they arise. And having a fair, unbiased judge who can sort through the difficult issues, and believe me, when a matter goes to court, it's usually a difficult issue. You have arguments on both sides, and many times, it's not like it's right or wrong or good or bad. It's like, it's sort of like Solomon. Had to split the baby, and you're trying to figure out what is the best solution for everybody involved. And so, because that's what my platform was in my campaign was every person needs to be treated fairly, not just the people who are claiming someone did something wrong, not just the people. Every single person in this needs to be treated with respect. And so that's what our court system needs to be based on, is value in each person. And so judges make a huge difference in making sure that happens.
Okay. Well, earlier this week we had a guest on that works in the nursing department, and she was telling people, find your passion, before you get into a certain field. Okay, the same with the legal profession. What advice would you give anyone going into the legal profession?
The things that I think are very key, important in the legal profession, your ability to communicate, whether in writing or orally.
Okay.
And I was never a great speaker when I was younger. I was the guy in the corner that didn't say anything. And so, I had to learn how to do that through law school. And in law school, they bring that out of you, make you speak in front of other people, and you become more comfortable. But being able to communicate a position with clarity, I think that the key to being a lawyer that is effective is taking a difficult issue and sort of compressing it down to a simple proposition. Most of us, if someone gives us an idea and it takes more than 2 or 3 minutes to discuss, our attention span may drop a little bit. But if we can be presented an idea, even a difficult one, in 20, 30 seconds, in pretty simple terms, we can grasp that. And so that's what lawyers have to do, is try to make a possibly difficult or complex issue more simple and understandable.
Okay. And then what about the money aspect? Some people think, I'm going to get rich quick.
Well, I think certain lawyers do make a lot of money. Some lawyers don't make much of anything. The practice of law, to me, is no different than any other job. It's just hard work. And I think you have to care about people to be a good lawyer.
Okay.
You have to, the money sort of follows under certain circumstances, and there's been, you see some of these big personal injury lawyers that apparently make lots of money,
okay.
And maybe people in big firms that make a good paycheck. But practicing law is not the kind of profession, I don't think, that generally produces big paychecks all the time. But it is it's an occupation that allows you, if you really have a heart for people, to try to make a difference in individual us.
That is wonderful.
And with that, we're going to get ready to wrap up the show. We have been speaking with local attorney Scott Willhite. We want to thank Scott for stopping by the studio. He will be back August 10th. He'll be here the second Wednesday of each month to answer your legal questions. So be sure to tune in each and every Monday through Friday. Listen to Community Conversations. Have a good weekend. This is K on 2.5 FM. Well, I'm thinking that it's Friday. Well, who we got on your Friday? 5 seconds.
We have Malia Cook, Tyler Brown.
Listening to Community Conversations on KMT 101.5 FM. Program focusing on the people